In this video, we're going to talk about the ecological significance of seedless plants. And some of this information we have covered in the other videos, but we're going to kind of bring it all together and summarize it here. So we'll start out by talking about the mosses and liverworts, and these are known as colonizing plants. And what that means is that they are typically the first plants to show up in an area. So they are involved in primary succession, and that's when new land is formed. And one example of primary succession would be lava from a volcano eruption that ultimately forms new land. So that's actually happened not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, with some volcanic eruptions in Hawaii that actually made the island bigger. Secondary succession is when you have an area that was previously inhabited by plants and animals, but something catastrophic happened that essentially killed everything off. And this could be something like a forest fire. And so the colonizing plants are the first ones that are able to come into the area and basically reestablish the base of the food chain. And oftentimes these plants are able to break down substances to release minerals in order to make the environment more hospitable for other plants and animals. The spores often get to these areas because they are carried by wind, birds, or insects, and they help to provide food and shelter for other organisms that are coming in to recolonize the area that has been destroyed or to newly colonize this new land that has formed. We talked about phylum Bryophyta, which are also known as the true mosses, and they form the base of the food chain in hostile environments. So remember we talked about the tundra and how things like caribou eat mosses in order to get nutrients. They don't have roots. Remember, they have kind of shallow rhizomes, which help them to not have to penetrate the frozen ground. So they have kind of a superficial anchoring system. They're able to survive desiccation or dehydration events. So they can kind of go dormant when they dry out, and then when water is available, they're able to rehydrate and become active again. They can also make the soil more amenable to other plants, and that essentially means that it can process substances in the soils in order to release things like minerals and other nutrients and convert them into a form that other plants can use. They often form these mycorrhizae with fungi. Remember, this is a mutualistic symbiotic relationship, and it helps to fix nitrogen. And by fixing nitrogen, it's taking atmospheric nitrogen and converting it into a form in the soil that plants can use. And because the true mosses, they absorb water across all their tissues, so they don't have true roots and they don't have vascular systems. And because of this, it actually makes them vulnerable to pollution. So scientists can actually look at the diversity and amount of mosses in an area over time in order to kind of monitor air quality. Ferns are involved in rock weathering, and this is another way that basically minerals are released from something like a rock into the soil, and it makes these minerals available for other plants to use. Ferns also help to slow erosion because their roots and their rhizomes help to basically hold soil in place. And some ferns have a symbiotic relationship with cyanobacteria, so they're involved in that nitrogen fixation, which remember, it just means taking atmospheric nitrogen and converting it to a form in the soil that other plants can use. Peat moss can be dried and burned to use as a fuel source. There are also peat moss bogs that are used to cultivate cranberries and blueberries. I remember there used to be commercials for Ocean Spray cranberry juice, and it would show, actors, but it would show basically farmers standing in this kind of bog surrounded by cranberries. And so that gives you kind of a visual of that. Peat moss is also a soil conditioner because it helps to hold moisture in place. So it can kind of absorb moisture and hold it there to make a plant less likely to become dehydrated or dry out. Seedless plants also make up the majority of the coal that we burn for energy. So these plants that existed millions of years ago, after they died and over time and pressure, with a lot of pressure, they developed into coal. And then we can extract the coal from the ground and then burn it as a fossil fuel in order to extract energy from it.